Hi everyone, thank you for joining us today for our event, BIM, How Hard Can It Be? Today's event is presented by Viewpoint Construction. Before we launch into the main presentation, I'd like to go over just a few brief housekeeping items. First, today's event will be about an hour long and we will be recording it. We will email you a link to the archived recording so you can view the presentation again later, or you can share it with a colleague. Please disable your pop-up blockers to ensure you have no trouble viewing the slides or links in today's web event. This is an interactive event. Feel free to submit questions to our speakers using the chat box on your screen. We also encourage you to tweet throughout the event. Use the handle @ViewpointCS and use the hashtag ViewpointCanHelp. If you'd like to enlarge the slides, you may do so by dragging the corner of the box. This function allows you to make them larger or smaller. Please take a moment to visit our Resource Center. The box is on your console. Here you can access a number of resources that you might find helpful. If you're having an issue with sound, you can adjust the volume using the media player tool in your console. If you have any technical difficulties during the webinar that I haven't covered, click on Control F5 to refresh your screen. If that doesn't work, please feel free to reach out using the Q&A box. Finally, at the end of this event, we will present you with a survey. Please take a few minutes to fill it out and let us know your thoughts on today's event. And with that, we're ready to begin. Ben, it's all yours.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. So my name's Ben Wallbank. I'm an architect by background, and for the last 7 or so years, I've been a BIM consultant, specializing really in all of the process, workflow management, and organizational issues that BIM puts as challenges to all the people who want to participate. And I am the BIM strategy manager now at Viewpoint Construction Software, and I'm based in the UK. But today, I'm not. Today I've been at a BIM conference in Czechoslovakia all day, so I'm now in a hotel room in Prague. It's late evening, a rainy late evening in Prague. And I have nothing better to do, of course, than talk to all of you. So that made me think. So here I am. I'm talking to you over an internet connection to 100 or so of you in the US from Prague. And whilst obviously I did pause for a minute thinking about that, hopefully it will all work swimmingly well. So just think about what that would have been like only a few years ago for somebody trying to do a similar thing. You know, we would have been using written letters to send out. Things would have taken days and weeks. And certainly if I worked in the post office, I couldn't have imagined the change that technology and the digitization of communication could have made on my industry. So you know, as a postman, you know, they're all faced with huge challenges of lessening quantities of mail, but actually increased parcel usage due to the internet and so on. So you know, these are really interesting things. So what I'm going to talk today about is really four key topics. I'm going to give you an introduction to Viewpoint, a little who we are, and give you some thoughts about important things to think about in that regard as well. I'm going to say what I've said, what do we mean by BIM, but I'm actually going to say what I mean by BIM, because if you ask 100 people, they will come up with slightly differing views on what BIM actually is. So I'm going to give my interpretation of that. Then I'll talk about some of the barriers and challenges to adoption. So I've already actually mentioned a couple of them. And then end up with really sort of talking about how Viewpoint's for projects product can help with BIM adoption and the kinds of things that it probably can help you solve in your day-to-day lives. So Viewpoint are, I'll just wait for that to advance. Viewpoint are a global company based out of Portland, Oregon. About 3 years ago, Viewpoint bought a company set up in the year 2000 for projects in the UK, which was a common data environment tool, a collaborative tool for sharing information over the internet. But what really interests me, and we're expanding fast, but what really interests me was that just after that, Bain Capital, a US investment company, invested a huge amount, I think about $250 million in Viewpoint. So why would a construction software company be such an attractive investment opportunity? And I think the answer is that the construction industry is one of the few remaining industries to be digitized and to offer the possibility of expanding into the digital age and the potentials that can offer. So most industries like telecoms and banking and even central government to an extent have already gone down this path. So what do we mean by BIM? I'd like you to think about integrated process first of all. What is integrated process? Well, it's the ability to share and use data between team members from the same discipline and the ability to share and use data between different disciplines. In other words, you can work with the same information at the same time. So concurrent working. To make this succeed, we need a common language. So we are using English as our common language to communicate at the moment. You need a platform to communicate the common language. At the moment, we're using the internet and the various bits of hardware that we need to be able to communicate. But most importantly, and this is the one I would like to stress most of all, we need a willingness to communicate the common language. So there, all over the world, in the various parts of the construction industry around the world, there have been study after study after study, which have indicated that the construction industry is not a collaborative industry. It is an adversarial industry where information is kept close to the information provider. There's not a lot of sharing going on. And even where case studies took place to try and prove that collaborative work helped the industry, and those studies did take place and did prove that there was help, even if when that happened, the industry as a whole didn't adopt. And that's interesting. But other industries, so if we think about integrated process, other industries like manufacturing, so manufacturing adopted maybe 15, 20 years ago now, ERP and MRP, and adopted integrated processes. So, if you're a car manufacturer, what used to take, from design to manufacture, which used to take about 6 years, apparently now takes about 8 months because people are working in concurrent process. And there's a fantastic book talking about this, The Toyota Way, which I can thoroughly recommend as a great descriptor of what integrated process actually is and means. Now, in my opinion, in construction, integrated process is called BIM. So, why have we had a problem? Why are we so much slower than anybody else? So I think part of the problem is that there is this understanding that BIM is actually technology. And it's not just technology. It's these bits that I've become interested in. It's as much about the management and organization and the processes and workflows as it is about the technology. Technology is obviously important. So about 7 years ago, I was a director at an architectural company, and I really thought I'd got the BIM T-shirt. Because then I was doing stuff that's really commonplace now. I was working on a collaborative BIM project. So in this case, it's a £25 million, 161 apartment scheme in the East End of London, where we were all modelling. Architects, structural engineers, MEP engineers, We were modeling away, and we were even doing some timing against the elements of the model construction-wise. So that's 4D. And we were doing some 5D, and that's cost. So when we went out to tender, we were taking cost and quantity from the model, at least to a certain extent. And I thought I was so much at the cutting edge. But you know what? The T-shirt really ought to read, it's all about the information. And these days, it probably also ought to read, big data is coming. So when I lecture at a number of universities in the UK and around the world, and most of the departments there are all interested in big data. And actually, if we look at some of the industries that have already digitized, they're all talking about cross-sector data usage. And this will happen within the next 10, 15 years. So we're really going from no data to a very data-rich world in a very short length of time. So in BIM terms, of course, the model is important, particularly during the construction process. There's all kinds of interesting things in terms of coordination, clash detection that we can do with our federated models. But if you think about it, every time any originator in any BIM originating software places an object into their model, that particular component of a building or a railway or a road, that particular component is given a GUID, a globally unique identifying number. And actually, off that number, you can hang any information. So if you think about 7 or 8 light fittings, all identical within a single room, each one of those light fittings in your model is given a unique number. And off that number, so one of them, it might be in a theater and the floor is raking. So to change the light bulb for the few that are down at the high end will take more people and will be a different process than the few at the top end of the room. So that's why it needs a unique number. So that light fitting might have the design output of the light appended to it in information terms. It might have the actual output of the light, the light bulb type, the energy consumption of that light fitting, the energy consumption or the carbon use in its manufacture, how much in carbon terms its transport to site from its place of manufacture was. You name it, any information. How many people it takes to change the light bulb. Any information can be appended to that particular item. So when you think about it, as the asset runs through its life cycle, the model retains huge importance as a graphical interface, a visual route map to data, but the data becomes more and more important. And when we think about certainly a lot of the BIM challenges that we're starting to get now, this is the key thing to remember. It's that the design and construction, so different studies, actually, this is a Turner and Townsend study, but different studies vary by a percentage point or two, but they're all around the same sorts of amounts. So different studies will all say that design and construction's around 20% of the whole life cost of an asset. And in this case, it doesn't even include the demolition. So when we think about asset data, we should think about now not just the delivery period, the construction period, but the strategic period when the job is being thought about by the client, and equally about the data being retained for the whole operational period. And that certainly is part of the message that we're trying to address within Viewpoint for projects. So a couple of things about what BIM isn't. So we've already seen it's not a new concept. It's, other industries have been doing this for some time. It is not a technology. It is not just a model. And it's not just for design and construction. And actually, you know what? It's not the answer to all your problems either. It's just one of the things that can help you with it. So we can look at what change has been wrought on other industries by their digitization. So, you know, here, if we think about retail, for instance, in the 1970s, some bright spark thought of the idea of point-of-sale information, so the barcode. So this is effectively the barcode is a GUID for the item of retail, and off that barcode was originally cost, and then it became cost and delivery and storage, and people worked out you could work out how much was being stolen from your store by tracking what goes into the store and then tracking what you sell, and then the remainder is what's been stolen. So and now it's a remarkable thing. So now you know, retailers will use their databases to market to me a certain type of wine based on what I previously bought, and they will. This is true, believe it or not. They will market baby related goods to women who stop buying sanitary protection. So it's really getting sophisticated, the types of things that you can do looking at big data sets. So what has that meant for retail? So retail in the 1970s was lots of shops and lots of small purveyors of you know, lots of small stores. And it very quickly became the Walmarts of this world, you know, very large players, absolutely stringently controlling their supply and delivery chains, their supply chain. And now we're seeing actually the possible demise of the store altogether with the increase of the internet. So, you know, enormous change wrought on an industry by its digitization. And why, oh why, would we imagine that construction would be any different? So, given that other industries have been doing this for a while, you know, why has our industry not just got on and done it? And I think the answers are really quite easy. So, I've been back in it was back in 1990. I moved my small architectural practice at that time from the drawing board to CAD. And as I did that, I happened upon what would now be termed BIM originating software. And it changed my life. I slowly realized that this would change our industry, and I would go around talking to fellow architects about how we should lead the push and the march towards BIM. And the trouble was, it was always one of these things. If you look at that slide, somewhere in the distance is an elephant, and this is this wonderful African phrase for something that's really dangerous. So this is used because apparently, if you look up and the elephant's miles away, you know, the next time you look up, it's right there in the room with you. And we're kind of like that now. So for years and years, I'd go around telling everybody they've got to change. And there's really no doubt now that the change is upon us. And that's really because governments have got involved to a greater extent or a lesser extent around the world. So collaboration is a huge challenge for everybody. And I'll talk a bit more about that in a second. But I'd also like you to think about this. You know, think about, so here's a study, a Gartner DataQuest study from back in 2004, and not a lot's changed since then, actually, looking at digitization across industries as a whole. And the industries up at the top are the ones you'd expect to be the financial and telecoms industries. And then you've got manufacturing and, somewhat surprisingly, government somewhere in the middle. And we look for construction, and then you spot it somewhat behind agriculture in certain respects, right down in the bottom corner. So it's, and if you look at other factors like IT spend in the construction industry, it is a way lower proportion of revenue than it is in other industries. So these are interesting problems. And then this was a really fascinating Hill McGraw study from back in 2010, and this was quite a large study with lots of graphs in, and this was the one I liked. This is the measured return on investment. In other words, the ones that weren't people saying, I think I've made money, but the ones where they felt that there was proof. Now, in any set of figures, you would expect there to be a bunch somewhere, and that kind of is around. So people are saying for the money they've spent on investing in BIM, they're getting a 20 to 25% return on investment. And there's some oddities here. So you've got right up at the top end, you've got around 10% saying that they've got over 100% return on their investment. And that seems a bit odd. I reckon those are contractors, because if you think about it, you spot one really big clash off-site before you go on site, and that could save you a huge amount of liquidated and ascertained damages for delay to the project. So that kind of makes sense. But the worrying one is this one, those on negative or break even. So why would it be that you adopt new technology and you find that you are not making good returns? So I think actually the difference here in figures between North America and Europe, the study also said that there were far more early adopters within North America than in Europe at that time. So that would account for, if you like, some of this difference, which is early adopters have the growing pains of adopting new ways of working and so on. But it's a staggering figure that if we take the break evens or negatives, it's around 20%. So that's the worry. So why is that? So I think the answer actually lies in the challenge of BIM adoption. So I've gone 2 slides forwards. Is this slide not going to animate? That would be annoying. Yes, it is. Oh, good. If we think about the move from the drawing board to 2D CAD, that was just replicating what we'd always done. You were just making the process of producing drawings faster by automating some of that process, but you weren't actually changing fundamentally what you were being asked to do at all. The change for BIM is far larger, even as we move to collaborative process within our office. So even if we're doing lonely BIM in one business, suddenly it's not an individual producing a drawing. Suddenly it's a group of people working on a virtual model of a building. So we have to collaborate in a far more detailed and structured way than we ever have before. And likewise, when we start working with other offices, are you using my office standards or are we using yours? How are we going to work together? And of course, that becomes much larger once we start to involve the supply chain as we head towards the really interesting stuff, phase 3, if you like, which is when we get the supply chain involved and we go for really interesting, data transactions. The challenges of collaboration then become greater still. So I think this is why, until now, there's been a slowness in adoption. So it is this need for standards and for working in a far more structured way. So standards are really the silver bullet for collaborative BIM work. And without them, collaborating is at best problematic. And at worst, it causes BIM to fail. It actually means we all do far more work for less output. So standards also ensure that our data can be used onwards through the facility's lifetime. And eventually will ensure that our data can be used. So this is about now making sure that our data is in a nice, open, structured, shareable format. So this is the open BIM message partly, that other softwares and users will be able to make use of. So discipline, I'm afraid, is important. So one of my messages is, find your standards and start to use them, and then actually apply them quite hard. So, discipline in BIM adoption is a really good thing. But we need also to ensure that every contributor knows what it is that they're being asked to do. And we need to record what each contributor's actually done. And, are they actually doing what they've been asked to do? This won't actually, standards don't cause more work. So there's a short-term learning curve, but actually once you know them, I think that they will save the industry time. So let me give an example. At the moment, every contractor seems to steal competent staff from the next contractor, and then you spend the next week or so doing your induction process to show them how we work as a particular company. But if we start working to our standards, they'll know the way that we work because it's the same as our neighboring companies. And so, that immediately there's a saving there because we're all working to a set of standards. So if I look around the world to Australia or China, they've got their standards, and the Finnish standards, which are incidentally very good. There are 13 chapters to their standards, and they're also they produce them in English. I can say that they're one of the better ones to have a read. The Norwegians, Statsbrug, have their standards. The Germans have standards. The Swedes have some standards. The Dutch have standards, goodness me. Even the French have standards. The Russians have some standards. The Japanese are writing their standards. I believe that their ministry are just sort of finishing their standards now. The British, you won't be surprised to hear, we've got our set of standards too. And the Canadians have a standard. And, you've got possibly more than this. You've got 4 sets of standards I've been able to identify in North America, in the US as well. So, look, there are a bunch of different standards being developed around the world, but what's interesting for me as somebody who's boring enough to read them is that they are actually really similar. They've got fundamentals which are the same from country to country to country. So if I look, for instance, here's the Penn State guidance notes, and if I look at them, you have a need, there's a requirement understood that in today's industry, the employer has not only to find a way of commissioning the hard deliverable, the actual building, the built asset, the road, the railway, whatever it is, and there are traditional ways of doing that with employers' requirements at tender, but that the employer now has to have requirements for the soft deliverable, the data deliverable to go alongside that. And that, that is in the form of employers' requirements. So, and they're called slightly different things around the world. In the UK, we call them EIRs. You call them employers' BIM requirements. It doesn't matter. It's very similar from place to place. I think I've just skipped 2. Yes, I have. And in response to that, just about all the standards say that the design and construction team puts together a BIM execution plan to say how it is that the construction team, as a collaborative unit, will deliver what the employer has asked for. So you've got BIM execution plans, you've got employers' requirements. And within those employers' requirements, you have, in all of these cases, huge matrices that define who's doing what and when. And these tend to take the form of endless spreadsheets that are then really hard to monitor. So it's hard, first of all, to say that who's doing what and when, and it's hard to track progress against that. So I think what we've been trying to do at Viewpoint 4 projects is develop ways to help this process, defining, so we're not just dealing with spreadsheets uploaded. So I'll talk a bit now about how I hope that we can help you. So why is collaboration key? And why is a collaborative environment key to success? The first thing is we have lots of different players who use lots of different softwares. There are literally, I did in the UK market, I did a little study which revealed over 175 different BIM softwares being used commonly within the construction industry, and that was just the construction one. So that doesn't. So you've got your contractors, you've got your tier 2, your supply chain. They all use their own softwares. You've then got analysis softwares as well. You've got your subcontractors and suppliers all using, so everybody's using different softwares. And you've got to find a way of bringing all of this stuff together into a single repository so that everybody can share this information real time. And clearly, documents haven't disappeared yet. It needs to be able to deal with documents, but it can't just be a document control, an EDMS system, a document control system. It has to help with project communications. Clearly, it has to deal with models and BIM, and it has to deal with mobile data entry. Well, I'm not going to talk about the whole kit and caboodle today. I'm just going to concentrate on the BIM bit. And of course, actually, it also has to deal with business intelligence from the data that you're getting as well. So these are really the issues that we at Viewpoint are working hard to address at the moment, and we're on a roller coaster ride where things are moving at a huge rate. So the common data environment. So that's what this is actually. What most of the standards refer to the need for a common data environment for projects. So the common data environment must provide access to the same information at the same time for all collaborators. It must control the collaborative processes, and it must provide visibility for everybody, transparent visibility of the team's performance. And it is that single source of asset truth. So what we've been working hard on is to give that ability to define who's doing what and when, then to monitor that, to validate the information coming in. So by validation, I mean, am I actually getting the stuff, the fields of data filled in that I was expecting to get? And is that data in the format that I was expecting it to be in? So has it got, six figures and 2 colons separating the 6 figures? And of course, every common data environment has to record the who's done what and when. So I'm going to look just at the BIM bit, as I said, but under project controls, there is an absolutely key offering that we give you, and that is we've an integrated EIR writer, employer's requirements writer. So this could be where the employer's requirements are either, if the same common data environment is used throughout the asset's lifetime, in other words, at the strategic stage, through the construction stage, and onwards to the asset's lifetime, this could be used by the employer, but equally, it can be used to convey what the employer has asked for to the team, and add, so you have to remember that anybody employing anybody to do BIM work with requirements has their own sets of requirements. So a contractor, I would expect to be writing their own employer's BIM requirements for the things that they need. So, for instance, most clients don't necessarily want 4D time or 5D cost. They just expect to get it for a cost and expect to get it within a time. But those are things that a contractor would probably want to do to make the construction process faster and better and to get better cost control. So any contractor will have their own requirements for how they require the team to provide model information so that they can extract time and cost and many other things too, so health and safety requirements and so on, etc. We've also got a BIM execution plan writer. So both of these have standard clauses which drop down and the ability to write bespoke clauses as well. And of course, rather than just being a ring binder sitting on somebody's shelf in their office, rarely referred to, you always know that this is the most up-to-date one because it's in the common data environment, and that you've got that information immediately available. So I think probably the key thing that we've got with this latest release of Viewpoint for Projects is the information planner. So this now allows you to plan not only what models you require and from whom. So you put in the roles, you put in the work stages, the dates by which work is required, and then against each of those roles, by roles I mean companies, you would put what they are required to do in terms of model delivery, so the elements of the model and to which level of detail, and by which date. So it's beginning to be that big spreadsheet matrix, but in this particular case, we can monitor the delivery of information as it comes into the common data environment and say, yes, we're getting stuff, or no, we're not. So it allows each company to set their own deliverables, and then for a master program for the deliverables to be defined and agreed between all parties. And it allows data in COBie format to be agreed. So COBie, as I'm sure you know, was developed by NASA and the Marines actually in the US and the Coast Guard and Dr. Bill East in the States is a key player in the development of COBie. COBie is effectively a subset of the industry foundation classes. So COBie is a nice, structured, open data format delivered to them in the form of a spreadsheet, but we can use that structured data in a nice way for reading by other systems. So again, we can set in a granular way the deliverables in terms of the data from each party at each work stage. So the information planner looks to the user a bit like this. It's that matrix, similar to the spreadsheet that I showed you, but it's reporting again on delivery against work stage, and it does the same with the COBie deliverables, which are all settable. So it will say if somebody's late, it puts a flag against that, and you can raise a report against that and say, hey, you know, you've still got these items to do, and you'd said you were going to do them by this stage. But of course, we've also got so I guess one of the key things is that we've got the ability to host the information both through the project information management period, in other words, when the project through that design and construction period, but also through the asset information management period. We've got a web-based model viewer, so this allows anybody with an internet connection to view the model using no additional software other than their web browser. This will do all the things you'd expect it to do in terms of you know, providing markups and task allocation and sharing the design team meetings the same view of the model. It'll also export a BIM collaboration format file, so that is a file format that you can open in your particular, in Revit or ArchiCAD or Bentley EcoSim or in Allplan, whatever your particular, or Skier or whatever your particular Tekla, whatever your particular originating software is, you can open that task and get taken directly to that task within your software to make life a little easier. And again, we can monitor. You can monitor the deliverable of COBie. Oh, sorry, didn't mean to come off that yet. Bother. Done it again. Anyway, sorry, I'm flicking on too fast. I shall go more slowly. Done it again. There we go. So you can enter COBie data over the internet. We can federate, as of, I think it last Saturday, our new non-SQL database was released for COBie. So COBie is now 3 times faster in terms of our database dealing with that. But we can federate COBie data from different sources into a single COBie output, and of course the whole history of that federation and the various revisions of COBie is retained within the system. And we can also import for those still using Excel or spreadsheets, we can import that data. So most of the data from COBie we extract from the model. So you've got you can view the model and the COBie data at the same time. You've got three-way viewing of that, so you can select a component of the COBie and get taken to that particular component visually within the model. As I said, you can create and assign tasks and mark things up. And of course, we can RAG report on how you're doing. So in this case, you can see that this particular company has 21 fields, 21 individual fields of COBie left to complete for a given work stage, and by the end of the job, a further 10,400 fields to fill in. Now, of course, many of those fields would be filled out multiple times by one amendment within your model. So a lot of people make the point that, of course, one doesn't need to use an open standard like IFC or COBie, that one can map from a particular BIM originating software to a particular FM software. That, most of the FM softwares are relational databases, and they can map a field within a specific software to the field within another. Now, I'll try and explain why we're so keen on open data formats. So we're currently doing some work with one of our customers in the UK, the UK's Ministry of Justice, who own prisons and courthouses all over the UK. And they currently have 3 commonly used FM softwares, and they have different teams developing, using different softwares, doing construction works for them all over the country. So what using an open structured data format offers is the ability to compare. So whether it's a courthouse at one end of the country or a courthouse at the other, using different softwares with different teams, they have, because they have this underlying structured data, they have the ability to compare do a search on a certain boiler performance, not just across those two, but on any of their properties where they've got COBie data. So they can say, hang on, we've got a problem at this prison with this particular boiler type. Let's do a search across all our facilities on that boiler type and see what the service history is, or something like that. So, and that's actually why we've changed our database from SQL to non-SQL as well, because it makes this, it's a bit like Netflix and that kind of thing. It makes these kind of searches much easier. And also remember, this longer-term story about why we should go with open data formats. Big data's on the way. So now everybody's talking about cross-sector data. So that might be a facility that's interacting with, I don't know, with utilities and saying, right, I'm consuming this much water at the moment, or this much electricity, or it might be data on the people within a facility, and when the local transport's coming. You can only do all this stuff if we have structured data. So other people again talk about other industries which have gone down different routes, but they actually all the industries like ours, which are fractured with multiple players, have gone down the open data format rather than the industries that you look at that tend to have gone bespoke. Tend to be those who have had a few major players who've been able to map a few different solutions to each other. So so interestingly, I was doing a presentation like this from the UK to Washington, DC, to the GSA for Viewpoint a few weeks ago, and the fascinating thing with that particular tender that they've got out is that they're heading towards a much wider adoption of the industry foundation classes. So they see that as the way forward. Certainly in the UK, the government have indicated that IFC will be the way forward after 2016, where COBie is the open structure format wanted. And again, if I look to Scandinavia, they've been using IFCs for some years, as have places like Singapore. So it strikes me that this is the way to go. But I'm just going to take you on just now, having described all of this, I'll take you on the journey that any project has and how we see the common data environment working. So you've got a time running across the center of the page, and we have an asset owner up at the top. So the asset owner is in the top half of the page. So the asset owner starts by thinking about their strategy. So any organization has organizational needs. And this may well lead to a requirement for a hard asset. And that hard asset will be spaces and functions, or, you know, if it's a railway, lines and overhead cable or whatever it is. So it'll have requirements, hard requirements. Now, there are long-established ways of commissioning this work, and these have been in the form of employers' requirements that go out with tenders. And even in those, you know, there is a tradition even in those that there will have been soft requirements too for drawings representing the as-built condition, or even these days for 3D models. But now, there is also a requirement for data assets too. So there is this idea that organizations should look both at their organizational data requirements for making decisions. What data do we need to make a decision? So about, for instance, whether a particular scheme has financial viability. And also to ask their asset managers, or to ask potential future asset managers, what is the data requirements for understanding how to run that asset through its life. So now we have, alongside the EIRs, as part of them, employers' information requirements. So as I said, that's you know, almost all the different standards say that is the case. So you've now got data requirements as part of what we're being tendered, and that then goes across the wall in procurement to the contractor, but even or to the design and construction team, should I say? But even at this early stage, I would argue that what you've got in putting all of that together is an asset information model at the strategic stage. So to put that together, to put all of that together, the client has a number of different bodies that they will consult. Consultants, user panels, agents, asset managers, projects, you know, they've got a little jigsaw to put together. And so to do that and to record who's done what and when, define, monitor, validate, record, they need a common data environment to do that. But then, of course, the design and construction team need to respond. So they will put together, in the traditional way, contractors' proposals as part of their tender return. But now, that contractor's proposal needs to include evidence of the competencies of those in the supply chain to deliver the data requirements that so that's PQQs, if you like, pre-qualification questionnaires, and so on. They'll need not just their competency to deliver the hard asset, but also their competency to deliver the soft asset. Contractors EIRs, as I discussed, to define what the contractor requires from the supply chain, and of course how long each contributing company thinks it's going to take them to do their work. So this is already a project information model, but of course, unlike the client, there are many more players here. So that puzzle of putting all of this together is far, far greater. And so again, you need a common data environment to share that process, to begin to do all those things of defining, monitor, validating, and recording. You need a common data environment there. Now, we would hope that the common data environments on the asset information side and the project information side are one and the same, in other words, our system. But we understand completely that that won't necessarily be the case, so we understand the need to be able to trade data across the line. So, at award, the final BIM execution plan will be submitted with a master information delivery program, again, set up within the project planning tools within the common data environment. And at each work stage, data, models, and documents will be delivered, checked by the design and construction team, and passed across at information exchanges to the asset owner, who will also check and maybe chuck the odd thing back across the wall to get redone. And at that stage, for every work stage, there will be data, models, and drawing and documents to be retained in the asset information model. And that then continues throughout all the work stages, whatever they might be just one or two, might be 20 or 30 different work stages as defined by you and the team. That will continue throughout the project's lifetime until handover. And at that stage, the client will have their asset information model to help with the operational stage. But of course, the client also has a bunch of asset information models for their variety of assets. You know, if they're a large concern, and that allows, as I've already described, that allows the ability to compare across multiple assets. What I think a lot of contractors are missing is that this is also true for the contractor, that having that structured data set on different jobs with different teams using different softwares will allow them to do really clever pieces of analysis about the efficiency of their own work and their own deliveries on those different jobs. So you'll be thrilled to hear, approaching conclusion now. So we know we've got disparate teams, and that we need an integrated approach, that it's needed not just for the data that we produce is needed no longer just for our job of delivering a construction job, but throughout an asset's lifetime, and that by having a web-based, cloud-based solution, we can share that information, we can have integrated design and delivery. So there we go. I've got some time for some questions now, so I would be delighted to have a few. Greg, over to you.
Thanks, Ben. Thank you so much for that. So I wonder if you could elaborate your question here on IFC a little bit more for the audience.
Yes, of course. So IFC are the industry foundation classes. It is an ISO, an international standard, developed by what was the Alliance for Interoperability and then became Building Smart International. It was actually started off back in the day by Autodesk and HOK, but it now has wide adoption. Last year they got another tranche of funding from Autodesk and from Nemetschek and from Trimble, who are the major players within the software world, to continue the development of IFC. It is a structured data format for the sharing of information, and it has several huge advantages. So it allows differing softwares to know where to look is the easy way to get data, is the easy way to describe it. And it also makes a great archival format, unlike native software files. So native software files degrade really fast because, you know, we're now on 6 monthly release cycles, and within 2 or 3 years, you can't open older versions. So you've either got a job to be constantly updating your 20 and 30 models on your, or possibly more, on your common data environment system. You've constantly got to update them. The nice thing about IFC as an archival format is that it is bootstrapped. You know, every newer version will always open an older version. So that's it in a nutshell. But it is that common data environment. So Viewpoint for projects viewer is an IFC viewer. We strongly believe in this, and the data again is in COBE format, which is we extract from the IFC models and then supplement with other information. So we see this as do most of the big players in BIM around the world. Even in China, they have BIM in their 5-year construction plan, and IFC is identified as part of that. If we look around the world, most of the BIM initiatives are centering around IFCs or around other open common data structure formats. I hope that answered a little bit.
Okay, great. No, thank you for that. Another question about clash detection. Does Viewpoint's BIM product handle clash detection? Is that part of the solution?
No. So you can do, look, we'll federate models and you can do a visual clash detection on it. We do not try to do the jobs which other tools can do better. So there are long-established tools like Celebri and Navisworks or Tekla BIMsite which specialize in clash detection. So we think that checking ought to be done before, and actually all the certainly the British standard, which I know a little bit better, makes this very clear that before something is uploaded to the common data environment, a check should be done, and it is issued for a purpose. So that's not to say that you can't then spot something within it and raise a task against that. But we're working hard. As I say, at the moment we'll export a BCF, but we're working hard on BCF round tripping. So again, and closer integration. We've got a very good relationship with guys like Celebri on checking and guys like Synchro on 4D timing, which we will develop over time. So only visual clash detection, not the kind of sophisticated clash detection that other tools specialize in. So we're working much harder on making sure that we get that data format right and deliverable.
Excellent. I have a question here from Susan. What is the biggest challenge implementing BIM, in your opinion?
I think without any doubt it's the collaboration challenge. So why was I such a poor BIM evangelist going around telling architects that this is a really good idea and that we all need to do it? It's because it's really hard. Even if one or two parties are really keen on the idea, you can't do BIM without collaborating. That's why BIM is seen by so many governments as the way of enforcing collaboration on the industry. It's because you can't do BIM without it. So I think the best way to make BIM happen is for the client to understand the benefits to them. So in the US, you've got bodies, who have multi-billion-dollar construction as a proportion of the US construction industry as a whole. I understand it's quite small, but bodies like NASA and the Coast Guard and so on, who commission a lot of work, who have completely got the need for asset data and understand that it is by commissioning work with the soft deliverables that you enforce the supply chain, us, the architects, consultants and contractors, to deliver that. So I think that the private sector has further to go. I think the private sector clients who have a long-term interest in their assets are beginning to get the idea. In the UK, there's been a big initiative with government doing it. It's I suspect, a little easier in the UK because we're a much smaller country and it's more centralized. So you obviously have a federal system with lots of states. But I think that the hard thing to do is the collaboration bit, the working to standards, to, when the pressure comes on, not to fall back onto old working methodologies, because you are commissioned to deliver that data in this form, in a certain format, to do that. So that's the challenge, I think, for everybody is, so it's no longer just doing your work with a view to it being the best way to produce a set of drawings or a building for you, getting your bit of work done. You're doing your work not only with that view, but so that the data that you're entering as you do that. So as an architect, I might name a space in a building. And that name for that space, should be an omniclass definition of the name of what that space is, and that should be carried forward throughout the life of the asset and never changed unless the usage of that space changes. So it's about, it's about better data, coming through. So we've all got to learn that the work we do is going to be used by others, and to work in it's that discipline slide, I'm afraid. We will get our bottom spanked by the client if we don't deliver the data in the format that they want it, because that's what they've commissioned us to do. And what's worse is that unless we as the construction industry can do it, there are so many other industries now who are used to delivering data in structured formats that other industries will march in and do it. So I'm fascinated at the moment going into big contractors in the UK, suddenly to find them employing guys from the computer industry, from engineering sectors that aren't traditionally construction engineering sectors, because these guys and girls understand data. Sorry, I've answered far too long on that one.
No worries. So it looks like we're up on time here, Ben, but there are a few other questions that folks from the audience have submitted, and we do, for those of you who have, we have your email address, contact information, and we can reach out to you individually and answer those for you following the webinar.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'm happy to do that.
Thanks again.
If the questions get forwarded to me, I'll do it. My pleasure, everybody. Time for me to go.
Thank you again, Rachel.
That wonderful Czech beer now, I think.
Sounds great. Thank you again, Ben. We really appreciate it. Rachel, did you have anything else for the group?
No, we're good. Thank you, everyone, for attending.